Good afternoon all, and thank you for joining the very first in a series of customer story webinars where we focus on a recent case study and speak to the person that led that journey. Today's guest is the amazing Samantha Blunt from Samworth Brothers, where we helped implement Microsoft Project Online. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Baz. Thanks very much for having me.
Could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
So I'm Samantha Blunt and I'm the head of PMO at Samworth Brothers.
And how did you get into PMO? Is this the kind of thing that you dreamt about as a little girl at school, that you wanted to be a head of PMO?
Funnily enough, not sure PMO existed when I was at school. It was very much a case, like I think a lot of people in some ways, it just kind of happened by accident. So originally I was an administrator just at Office Depot, which was a previous company that I worked at, and a chap came in, a contractor came in who was asked to set up a PMO. Nobody knew what one was, what we were kind of going to do with it, and he basically ended up sitting in the same office as me and didn't know who to talk to, how to book a meeting room, where the org charts were, etc. So I ended up working with him and helping, and then he asked me formally to join the PMO as the administrator, which was 10 years ago now.
Fantastic, and here we are today talking about your role as head of PMO at Microsoft Project Online. So yeah, no, fantastic. Yes, so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better, I'm just going to ask a few quick-fire questions, and then we will talk obviously about Samworth Brothers, understand what Samworth Brothers as a group do, and we'll obviously then talk about your journey of deploying Microsoft Project Online. So quick fire questions are coming now. So okay. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, Star Wars.
Star Wars, okay. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Marvel, good, okay. What does the P in PMO stand for at Samworth Brothers?
We are a portfolio management office, visibility across the whole piece.
And your PMO, is that, it's not just an IT then, it's across the entire group, is it?
Yeah, so we're based within the IT function, but we, because of the way Samworth Brothers is set up, we have a visibility across all of the bakeries and all of the projects that are going on, so not just IT-led projects, but where IT has any kind of element, we're involved as well.
Brilliant. And final quick-fire question, what is your favourite food item?
Oh God, pizza, if I had to pick one.
Really? I was expecting you to say Ginsters or something from your list.
I probably should have, actually.
So Sam, could you quickly please introduce Samworth Brothers, just so that everyone's aware of what they as an organisation do?
Yeah, of course. So Samworth Brothers, as it says there, is a family-run business still. The Samworth Brothers is still family-owned and was set up over 100 years ago, but is now fourth generation Samworth at the top of the tree. And for a few well-known brands, which you'll see on the screen, so Saurine, Ginsters, Dickinson and Morris pork pies. But we also do a lot of stuff for the supermarkets, so Waitrose, Tesco's, M&S, and we make everything from ready meals to lovely fancy cheesecakes and desserts. And at this time of year, we've been working on Christmas food for quite a while. So
very nice. And it is lunchtime. Yeah.
Well, I know. Sorry, talking about food at lunchtime.
What about today? Yeah, a banana and a black coffee. So this is making my mouth water. And actually, to make matters worse, today, you're in Cornwall, aren't you? You're at the Ginsters office. Yeah.
I am. I'm calling from sunny Cornwall today.
Very good. Can you describe the smell of freshly baked pasties? Is that possible? No, let's not. Let's just move on.
Probably best.
So again, we're going to talk about your journey of implementing Microsoft Project Online. So first of all, why did you decide that you needed a PPM solution? What was the background? How did you arrive at that decision?
Okay, so we actually had one before this one, and it had been poorly implemented, I think is the best way to
But that wasn't Project Online though, was it?
It wasn't, no, it was another tool that we were using. So it was the wrong choice for us. It didn't do what we needed it to do, which was a much heavier focus on resource requirements. So the current tool we had wasn't working, and basically was coming up to its renewal date. We were about 4 months away from its renewal date when we started to think about, is there a way that we can do this better? Because the previous tool wasn't working, it also meant that we ended up having information in various other places. So Excel, PowerPoint, lots of people had lots of stuff in their heads. So we needed to really kind of pull everything together and have a solution that really worked for us. Our community was growing. So when I first started at Samworth Brothers, we ran 14 projects in the first year. This year and going into 2019, we're kind of around the 60, 70 mark. So it's grown a huge amount in the last 4 years. The project management community has grown, as well as awareness around the business. So we needed something that was going to be able to grow with us and develop with us, and actually help us as a PMO mature in what we could do and how we could partner our businesses, but also we needed a company that were able to support us in our journey as a PMO as an internal solution.
Thank you very much, Sam. So we know that you've selected obviously Microsoft Project Online, but a couple of questions. Why Microsoft Project Online? And could you give us a bit more insight around the user community within Samworth Brothers? So what types of users and what numbers?
Sure, yeah. So we actually kind of looked out in the wider market and actually had 3 different solutions presented to us by 3 different businesses to see kind of what was out there. We went with the Microsoft option because we were looking at Microsoft as a different solution. So the Microsoft Dynamics AX, if anybody's aware of that, as part of our ERP solution around our businesses. We'd also previously implemented 365, we had Skype for Business widely used around the business, so it made sense to us to look at the Microsoft offering because it would eventually, as well as in the early days, kind of suit whatever else we were doing within the business. It's also, its look and feel is very familiar for people, so in terms of putting something in front of people, it wasn't going to be quite as scary as potentially a brand new solution that didn't feel familiar. Yeah. In terms of the community that we have, now we're looking at around a dozen project managers with a mixture of internal that have either been employed or worked their way up through the ranks. So we've done quite a lot of development internally for some of our people. But we also bring in contractors to deliver some of the key kind of strategic projects that we're looking to do, because we want somebody that's come in and has done it before, and can help us to kind of take our bakeries on those journeys. In terms of the PMO, there's only 3 of us. We were 4, but we've lost one to a different role within the business. So there's currently 3 of us that manage the tool and look after it. And then the wider community is there's 17 different bakeries within Samworth Brothers. We have different relationships with each of them because they are all independently run and managed, so they all have their own MD, FD, they all have their own budgets and profit and loss, etc. So they each have a different relationship with us and vice versa. Some of them are more mature, so in terms of running projects have done a few over the last few years and really kind of understand the terminology and the awareness that they need to bring to us earlier on in the process. And we still have some that don't need IT, don't need to run it as a project, will go and buy something off the shelf and then suddenly find with 3 weeks to go that it needs to talk to this system and this system and this system, and oh by the way, now we need your help. So we have a real mix.
Yeah, they're very good. And as an organisation, you are making use of Office 365, of SharePoint and some of the other offerings available. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. We actually rolled that out previously to purchasing the Project Online tool. So Office 365 was rolled out across the estate. Skype for Business in particular is very well used because we are all over the place. So we have lots of different bakeries within Leicester, but we're all in Cornwall. We have sites in Gloucester, Manchester. So the Skype for Business in particular and the what that brings along with it has been a real kind of help to Samworth and cuts down on the amount of travel time and hotel bills that people are having to do sometimes.
Yeah, less trouble is always good. There is an old saying that only babies with wet nappies like a change. So how did you manage the change? You can use that one if you like.
Yeah, thanks. I'll keep that one for future. So because we did have something before this. So we did have a tool, we did have a process, we did have a framework, but we kind of whole scale looked at everything that we were doing and really kind of reinvented the whole lot really. We wanted to look at how we were working, if we'd gone too heavy with the framework, the process, and as we were maturing, how could we make it a bit more adaptive to the people that were using it? So not all projects need all documentation completing, you know, not everybody goes through a solutions paper, not every project needs an architectural drawing, and we had all of these different things. So the first thing we did was had a real amnesty of all the old templates, everything that we had, and kind of really looked at it to kind of go, is this still useful? Does it need to be reworked, or actually do we just bin it because it's not what we want to use kind of in the future? Following that, it was then that kind of that old saying of garbage in, garbage out. If we were going to put in a new tool, we wanted to make sure that the information that we were putting in there was as clean as we could get it. So really did some work within the PMO and asked our community, so our project managers and those that were going to be involved in the tool as well in terms of support, to look at how do we make sure when we make the transition and we move over that we are putting in the best amount of information that we can. The next thing we did was obviously communicate. So all across the business, all of the people that were going to either touch the tool, you know, on a daily basis, to those that were just potentially going to be managing the odd task that came their way, or managing timesheets. So making sure that we sent out the right level of communication across the different areas, so that making sure that the people understood what change was coming, when it was coming, so that we weren't kind of getting anybody in a shock, you know, kind of not knowing what was going to happen. And then finally, within that as well, we then actually ran it as a project. So we booked out people's time to make sure that they were available when we needed them, that they weren't trying to do this as well as their day job and other things as well. So really kind of, like I say, ran it as a project and made sure that time was available to people when we need it.
Fantastic. And reaching the point of the journey we have so far, would you say that the majority of the population is now bought into Project Online, the new ways of working? Has that been an overall success?
Definitely. We're coming up, Q1 next year will be our 2-year anniversary with using the tool. And that first year was very much about, you know, making the changes, getting everything in. But really the last year we've made little changes to the tool itself. We've looked at some of the processes around it and some of the tools and templates that we use around it. But actually we've just kind of left it alone and just let it bed in, get people used to it. People become, you know, more comfortable with it. They then find things for themselves almost. So it's really good, and like I say, it is absolutely now the only way of working.
So what benefits have you realised over the last year and a half or so?
Yeah, so we definitely now do have that one version of the truth. If the information doesn't come out of PMO and it doesn't come out of our you know, reporting and things like that, then it's really not worth the paper it's written on. So we have managed to achieve that. It took longer than we thought, which I'll probably come on to in a minute in the lessons, but it's definitely now we can kind of hand on heart say that's absolutely where we are. The information that we now use within Project Online allows us to roll up, so director level info and kind of that summary, very visual kind of reporting that a lot of directors tend to prefer, right down to when we're working with our bakeries. We can really be specific to just let them know what's impacting them, because as I was saying earlier, they are independently running in a lot of ways. They don't all care about what's happening at group level and what projects are going on in, you know, the rest of the sites. They only care about their world, so we can roll into that kind of level of detail.
Yeah, sorry Sam, but when you talk about information being rolled up, what solution are you using for that business intelligence?
So we link to our Power BI because we also have Power BI within the estate. So we roll up into that. Sometimes it is literally just taking out the resource graphs that we get and literally kind of cutting and pasting them onto a PowerPoint because, you know, some of our directors, they're not at the stage yet where they're willing to just kind of click the link and find out the information for themselves. But we don't do anything to the reporting. We just literally, you know, cut and grab it from the screens and put it into a nice PowerPoint deck. So, you know, they really are seeing the information as it was, you know, at a point in time, whether that was, you know, the day before or whatever it might be, but they're seeing, you know, almost as live as we can get it without without making them click a link.
Well, one of the big differences being that rather than spending quite a large portion of your week consolidating the data, now it's there all the time in Power BI, and it's just a case of exporting it as opposed to stitching it all together.
Absolutely, yeah. For us as a PMO, pulling it together, it's a pretty easy job, to be fair. Yeah, there's not a lot of time that the PMO spend on trying to collate everything and finding out all the different sources of information because we have one place to go.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
No problem. We also had a big amount of work that we needed to do with our pipeline of projects. So as I was saying, because of all the different bakeries that we work with, they all come to us with their own priorities for the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be. But we as a group function, because we sit across all of the bakeries, we then have 17 priority ones to deal with and 17 priority twos, plus our own, because the IT function has its own roadmap that it's trying to fulfill, as well as then very top down from a group level what Samworth Brothers group wants to try and achieve. So there's a lot of juggling, there's a lot of understanding what's a true priority, you know, 1 and 2, and actually what can be positioned potentially for later on in the year. So creating that pipeline has been a huge benefit to actually the whole group, but particularly the IT function as a whole. Because we have the same situation I'm sure that everybody else has in terms of we have too much demand and not enough resource.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have people sitting around twiddling their thumbs. So trying to manage our resource to understand where they need to focus their attention at any one time has been a huge benefit. We do have single points of excellence where we have, you know, 1 or 2 people as an individual that are the only ones that can fix that application or, you know, do that reporting, etc. So giving us the ability to be able to take that pressure away from them as an individual and manage it as a PMO function and coordinate that has been a huge benefit, not only to the PMO itself, but actually to our individuals that sometimes we're feeling that pressure of just getting multiple requests from everybody and trying to figure out which they did first, which is where we used to be.
Lessons learned. Obviously, you go through any implementation, any project, at the end of it, you give a bit of a recce as to what went well and what could have gone better. So what lessons have you learned?
So just some key ones, really. The training that we took and picked up as part of the deal that we, you know, kind of had with yourselves was the training was provided by yourselves as part of a part of the package. We didn't mandate it maybe as much as we should have. So some of our project managers, particularly the strategic contractors that are, you know, I've worked with projects before, I know what Microsoft project looks like, I don't need to come to the training. Actually, it was more than that. The training was much, much more than that. And it should have been, I think, mandatory for all of our people, because the minute we implemented and went live, we'd get questions of, oh, why is it doing this? And well, where do I find that? And actually, it took more of the PMO's time in those initial kind of 6 weeks after go live of actually just supporting and getting people through it, when actually those that have been through the training were much more comfortable with the tool itself, how it worked, why it did what it did, and you know, didn't have the same kind of level of questions. So definitely, as much as possible, if you pick a solution, get as many people through the training before you go live as you can, because it will make your own lives much easier afterwards. One of the other ones, that allowing that time to bed in, I think because we had a tool previously and because we were so invested in it, we thought everybody else would be, and that it would all just kind of, well, of course it's the right way to work, and why wouldn't you work like that? But it does take longer to bed that in than certainly we expected. So I think always just allow a bit more time for allowing that change to come in. Don't kind of put it in and then, you know, update it and make an improvement and change this and change that, because you're going to lose people on that journey otherwise. Kind of go in, let it settle for a little while, and then once people have used it for a little while and you maybe do understand that actually you maybe missed something within the training and a few people are having a similar issue, or actually we're going around the houses for something that we really don't need to do, then, you know, kind of collate that feedback and make that change further on in the journey rather than all at the start, because it'll panic people and and you'll lose them along the journey. And then really the last one for me in terms of lessons was the senior team. Certainly within Samworth Brothers there was a lot of gut feel and here, or I think that there's a problem there, and it was very much around conversations in corridors and you know, that kind of thing about where they thought projects were and how well things were going, rather than embedded in facts and emotion and removing the emotion. So I think once we started to do the initial reporting, the senior team weren't necessarily believing it. They felt that it maybe was should be telling them something different, but you know, stand by it, stand by your tool. As long as you know that you've done that housekeeping, that what the information that's going in there is correct, then what's coming out is also correct. So kind of standing by that and removing some of the emotion out of the reporting can sometimes, for some of the senior team, it felt for us just take them a little bit longer to kind of believe what you're telling them rather than what they thought was going on.
Sam, thank you ever so much. That's been fascinating. And if you would like to read the Samworth Brothers case study, the full case study is available on our website. All you need to do is go to wellington.co.uk, and at the top you will see a link to case studies. We've also got a multitude of other case studies on there, including JD Sports, who we actually have another customer stories webinar taking place with next month. That's on November the 29th at 12 o'clock. We also have a in-person event taking place in the middle of October on the 22nd at the Microsoft offices in London. I'm sure you probably have further questions, so our contact details are now shared on the screen, as well as details there for Wellington. You can follow Wellington on LinkedIn, and we also have an annual event that takes place called Future PMO. And Sam, you actually spoke at the most recent Future PMO on October the 4th. How did you find that experience?
It was good. Thankfully, this one I only had to partake in the game at the end, so Vince called me up on stage. But it was a brilliant event. It was actually my first one. I missed last year's due to being on holiday, but I know, but I'm definitely coming to next year's. I'm really looking forward to it again.
Fantastic. Again, Sam, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. And thank you to everyone that joined us today.